How's everybody doing? Good to see you all in what is like our second week in a row of no sun in New York City, but hopefully we'll change that soon. It's great to be here. I am Jesse Forman, Vice President of Enterprise Partnerships at Suzy. For those in the room who are unfamiliar with Suzy, we are an end-to-end consumer insights platform that combines quant, qual, and high-quality audiences so brands can make better and more informed decisions. Really exciting to be here talking about unlocking the power of insights on our panel today. First, before we jump into it, let's meet the panel. Who wants to go first? Matthew, over to you to start.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm, I guess, probably the second or third Samsung person you've heard from today, which is great. I guess my experience there is quite a bit different than Sukhmani's. I handle e-commerce, so I'm really focused on both the analytics piece, but also the customer insights, as well as marketing functions in general, but also the technology. Previous to Samsung, I've been there about 18 months. Previous to that, I worked at Amazon for about 8.5 years. A lot of it and also in the fashion industry. So electronics for me is relatively new, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Matthew. Hi, I'm Rachel. I am the Chief Brand Officer for Made by Gather, and for many of you, I'd imagine, who have no idea what Made by Gather is, we are a house of brands in the home and kitchenware space, and we're best known for our design-first approach to kitchenware products and our disruptive partnerships. So Beautiful is a partnership with Drew Barrymore, who hopefully you've all seen, and our beautiful products on her show, which is actually filming right now, as well as Crux, which is our collaborator brand. So we have a partnership with DJ and producer Marshmallow, as well as with Ghetto Gastro. Happy to be here.
All right, Alicia Mowder. I work for Panera Bread. My background is in restaurant. Basically, anyone that will let me eat for a job is where I will go and work. So I lead product strategy, menu development, again, a lot of eating, and the guest insights, talking to the guest about what they like to eat. So we've been through that. I've worked at Sonic before, did convenience store division for a while, and excited to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sisi Zhang. I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Razorfish, which is a digital agency within Publicis Group. And in my role, I oversee a team of about 150 data professionals across data science, data engineering, data analytics, and data instrumentation. And I'm also looking forward to chatting with our lovely panelists today about insights.
Awesome. Thanks. So let's jump into it. Obviously, today our panel is called Unlocking the Power of Insights, so we'll start with a lofty question here. How do you unlock the power of insights in your role? Sisi, let's start with you on this side.
Sure. So I think, from an insights perspective, and at least from a data perspective, as we all know, there's a lot of data out there. A lot of it's unstructured and can be very messy and noisy. And for a data team, it's really important to really understand and have rigor around the understanding of the data, but then also apply a little bit of the art and science to translating that into insights for our clients. So that can be anything from our traditional foundational metrics where we're reporting on KPIs for businesses or looking at advanced propensity models to unlock specific activations for different marketing orchestration events. But it's really about translating that data and using it in a way so that you're making value of it versus just looking at it in terms of the raw unstructured format.
I think that's a great point because there is so much data out there and there's so much insights, and a lot of time it sits in a folder and you say, hey, I did this, or hey, I have this. But how you actually make it something that's actionable is, very difficult. I found this blend of insights and analytics of what the guest says that they're going to do versus what they actually do is where you really see the magic. For example, I said I was going to go work out this morning. I actually ate 2 bagels and slept in. But when you blend what they say and that behavior, you start to really unlock what their mindset is, what they do, and then how to make that something that you can take and transform into a meaningful business strategy.
Totally agree. It is a art and a science. We at Made by Gather, we test literally everything. So from product features and benefits, willingness to pay for each of those features, our brand messaging, our packaging concepts, in-store merchandising, and to your point, many times, especially in focus groups and qualitative research, we hear one thing from consumers that doesn't actually reflect their behavior. So, it's really kind of that balance of like, when are you going to listen to what the customer says and kind of take that into your business strategy, and also balance it with kind of the gut intuition that we all have as leaders.
Yeah, I agree with all of what was said here. I think in the end, insights is a virtuous cycle that kind of starts with one thing, which is data. That turns into a recommendation, which has to turn into a modeling of some sort, and I'm mostly talking about e-commerce at this point, but where that turns into modeling and assumptions. And then the only way that really works and turns around and creates a virtuous cycle for you is to have a plan about it, have a set of assumptions, measure those assumptions, and see where were you right and where were you wrong. Because sometimes what people tell you and what people do are two different things. And making sure that you capitalize on what they do rather than what they say is more important. And then turn that into a new assumption so that your assumptions over time improve, your accuracy improves, then you make investments in the right place and in the right time. That's the virtuous cycle of it.
It's almost like what we were taught in high school, or even before that, hypothesis testing. Build a hypothesis, test, and test again. So definitely see that. Alicia, I think you brought up a good point that, and I know my partners have experienced this, I'm sure many in the room have experienced this. Sometimes you get a really great insight and it just sits as an insight. It doesn't drive impact in the business. It's hard to get someone to see it both for what it is and what it could be and the role it can unlock for the organization. Do you guys do anything very interesting or good tips for the crowd in terms of how to actually make sure those insights get integrated into your decision-making processes? Alicia, maybe you start with this one.
Yeah, this probably isn't going to be a popular answer, but we started putting KPIs behind our research. So we went out and said, what business decision have you made with the research that we did? And did we get a return on that? And it's really cut down on the amount of, I just like to know. I can go talk to the guest, let's go do it. Because we all love to talk to the guest, and we like to not do anything with that. And so we started saying, as an intake form, what are you going to do with this? What's the business decision you're driving? And then we follow up to make sure that the data that they got out of the research does actually produce an action. They take it into a business decision, and then where does that go? And that has really helped us streamline the amount of stuff that sits in folders that's fun to do that doesn't go anywhere, into really making sure that we are now not a support function, but like a strategic driving part of the organization and what we're accomplishing.
Definitely. Sisi, I'd love to hear from you on the same topic. Obviously, we have a little bit of the brand perspective, but from the agency perspective, different data points coming in. How do you make sure that gets to both your internal teams and your partners?
So I think Alicia kind of touched on this, but it's really about setting the strategy and the alignment up front with your stakeholders. And I think for us, we have a lot of internal as well as external stakeholders. And to make sure that the data and the insights are really adding value, it's meeting with our stakeholders, it's understanding and developing the measurement frameworks, the specific KPIs, and also ensuring if we're putting time against understanding and analyzing the data, and then also putting together insights and recommendations, that there's a next step and a so what. So if that's a next best action, or if it's something around consumer segmentation, or if it's something where we're trying to be really predictive about how we're going to market, that there's a next step and there's a strategic imperative behind that, so we're all aligned.
And Rachel, you mentioned you guys test everything, or as much as you can. Obviously, that's a lot of testing going on. How do you manage all of that and make sure those insights are seen?
Yeah, so I like to call it kind of a fast follow approach. So we very quickly, when research closes or a study is in the market, team gets back from a focus group, typically within 1 or 2 business days, there will be a top line report that's sent out, and that goes to our entire executive leadership team, including the founder. And in the cases of Drew, who's a co-founder and creative director in one of our brands, it goes to her team as well. And really for us, we think about kind of our process and workflow as follow really fast and then share broadly. And each team lead who is a part of that initial distribution is all right, starting to think about, all right, what are the actions I'm going to take? Then we have a readout typically 5 days later where all the stakeholders come together and kind of make decisions or decide not to. But it really is for us, with our product development cycle in kitchen electrics and cookware, we get an insight, we have to move extremely fast in order to impact change with our product development life cycle.
That's great. And Matthew, from the e-commerce perspective, I'd love to hear, same idea.
Yeah, I think most of my thoughts were already said, but I think the one other thing I would say is that insights can turn into kind of a fire hose of a lot of information turning into a lot of insights. And I think the real trick is to take the nuggets out of it and appropriately share those with the right level of people. Samsung's a big company. I have a lot of different bosses that I have to share information with. If I gave all of the information to all of them all the time, then I think nothing is important and nothing really matters. So really, I like to take it and parse it into pieces that make sense and that are actionable, and use that as a way of driving change within the organization and driving support for our activities. And I think to do that well means you have to be very selective in your nuggets of information.
Absolutely. I'm a little bit more of a example-based learner. I'm wondering if you guys have any good examples of when you've done this, seen this done well, whether it's a campaign, whether it's a new menu item, a new kitchen appliance, you're building a new CRM strategy. I'll leave this one open to whoever wants to answer.
I'll start. So we have started to say, how can we fail at the insights phase? Earlier, they were talking about, opening up for failure, but the time you've launched a product, there is so much resources sunk in. It's a really, really bad time to fail. And so we have said, how do we lean into the insights earlier? How do we get in front of the guest? And we took 6 different creative campaign executions into focus groups last week. 4 of them were abysmal failures. I mean, they tore us apart. They're like, what? This doesn't make sense. It's not good. But we celebrated that as a win because we got those out of the way for a very low cost, low risk execution, and now can focus and double down on the 2 that did resonate and build on those and go through it. And so trying to pull that in, I think your point about what are the right insights and the meaningful insights, we're trying to get better about that. It's a journey because we are a little bit of we want to show everything, and telling when it matters to the right people is a harder selection, but really using the insights further upstream to mitigate risk, fail quicker, and so what's going in for the resource investment is validated to some point, and it minimizes that risk at the point you get to launch.
Any other examples?
We've done at Samsung for the homepage, we have a rotation of different products that we show and features and offers. And I think one example, you'd asked for a specific example, we've taken a look at that and said, okay, let's rotate around and see what happens when we change the first one, because the first one seems to do better than number 6. But actually, as we analyze that further, it doesn't always mean that what's in the first position does the best. Sometimes it's the best offer, and sometimes it's hard to tell because we don't see customers doing it and understand, well, were they just waiting around and then they clicked on something that was interesting to them, etc. But then we've also changed how we've been messaging on that. We've changed the call to action on those. We've changed the offers from it's focused on a feature versus it's focused on an offer. And I think to really do it well, I think you need to try a lot of things, try everything to really know. But you don't have to try everything for equal periods of time. So if something doesn't work, you can immediately cut that out, reduce the number of options that customers are seeing, and then move forward. But then also for us, because we're constantly launching new products and new offers, we have to figure out where does it make sense to have offer-based in our rotation versus products versus new products versus a different feature of a product. Sometimes it makes sense to show the products together. Hey, you can buy a whole kitchen worth of stuff from us. Here's how it could look like. And it is art and science in the end as to what you're going to test. But in the end, it turns into a fact that has to be communicated to the people that can make those changes. In our case, the rotation of those key visuals is our choice, but I sometimes get challenged on that and have to justify that to management or to someone else because I own display products, and so I want display to be the first thing, but somebody else owns dishwashers and they want dishwashers to be first.
Of course. And I'm sure the future state AI will tell us what we need, and then we'll just buy that.
Just say because AI told
Exactly. Well, on a similar topic, I was at CES a couple weeks ago with Bread Innovators. If anyone was there, it was awesome. I'm no Mark Cuban on stage, but I tried to be. But seeing Samsung's products on the floor and how AI is being incorporated into anything from the refrigerator to tell you what perishables in your fridge and how long they'll be good for, to an app that I started using after being at the conference because my wife is vegan. It'll take any recipe, swap out ingredients, and make a non-vegan recipe vegan. It's a free app. Had no idea about it. It's been around for like 10 years or so. Now I'm pitching Samsung, but it's been awesome. So on that note, obviously the theme of today's summit is marketing for tomorrow. Want to talk a little bit about AI. We use AI a ton at Suzy to help our partners run more efficient research. We've seen the challenges and the benefits of those kinds of things. Wondering how you think emerging technologies like AI or others might impact the insights landscape going forward. Sisi, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think from an insights perspective and a data perspective, AI will definitely be a positive benefit. I think there will always be a learning curve and some growing challenges along the way in terms of utilizing the tools. But when you think about just the amount of data that's out there, AI can help us do a lot of things, process that data faster, build models faster. But then I think also from an insights perspective, maybe help unlock a next level insight that when you're looking at so much data, you might not be able to see at first glance, but when you have tools and you're able to leverage them, the AI is able to help you crystallize that in a more concrete way.
I mean, I think that's a great point. If we're talking more about predictive, how do you use insights to become predictive about where you want to be going, what sales impact is going to be, where things are leaning. There is, and someone mentioned it earlier, what you put in is a big determination on what you get out from AI right now and the quality of that. And I think that's just going to get smarter over time. And so the ability to harness that to help us, figure out where we need to go faster than what we're able to get to is going to be huge. And, I think the landscape and the conversation we would have on the stage in 2 years is going to be completely different than what we're having today.
Totally agree with that. Where we are from an AI perspective is just very kind of dipping our toe in the water, like understanding what's out there, also understanding like what can our internal team take on at this point in time because we are in hyper growth mode. But at the end of the day, again, it's art and science, like kind of key theme that keeps coming up. And it's like you can't, in my opinion, you cannot replicate human intuition. That is so important. And I don't think AI has figured that out just quite yet.
Currently we don't use AI, at least within e-commerce at all. But I can imagine a situation where we're figuring out test scenarios that could make sense based off of stuff that we don't directly know ourselves. A lot of what our testing has to do with is our own anecdotal information about how we are shopping or how employees within the e-commerce team are shopping versus what really happens out there. And even what really happens outside of our own website. And I think that would be interesting for me to understand, are there test scenarios that I haven't picked up or that we haven't decided upon that could be interesting for us to look at?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how we think about it too. For AI, it's not a means to an end, but it's a way to help us get to that point a little bit faster, helping to synthesize videos, transcripts from qualitative research, which again, to your point, can't be replaced by AI, Rachel. But once we get that human touch and then seeing how we can pull more insights from that data is how we're often thinking about this as well. Maybe one last question before we get some Q&A from the crowd. Thinking about the future, how do you foresee the role of insights changing in your organizations, and what do you think that will help unlock for your organizations? Matthew, maybe let's start with you on that end.
Yeah, I think as you know, Samsung seems to be moving more into the software space, if you want to call AI software as opposed to a pure hardware piece. I think what that's going to lead us to is new ways of using products with the software. As that accelerates and goes faster, I think we're going to have insights that understand that better earlier on. If people are using a phone in a certain way, we need to capitalize on that by having user-generated content or by creating our own content that we can show people, hey, here's a use case that you may not have thought of to have your refrigerator talk to your phone or whatever else. And I think as AI is more out there, the analytics piece is going to have to be even more important, but even be faster than us detecting it ourselves. And I think that's the only way that I can foresee it working. There may be other ways of it changing the product itself, with the usage of it and may create a situation where there's a specialty product that will bridge between two other products. That may be the case as well, and maybe we figure that out from e-commerce. Oh, I'm trying to get these two things to work better together. Does that turn into software? Does that turn into a hardware product? I'm not sure. But I think that's what we have to use it for.
So for us, we're actually going to be announcing this more publicly in a few months. But our largest brand, Bella, kind of sits in the everyday good positioning. We have, for the last 18 months, been engaging thousands of consumers and actually reinventing what that brand looks and feels like down to the actual product itself. So it's been quite a learning for our insights team, but it's so fascinating to take all the quantitative insights and also sit behind the glass, right, and look at people actually interacting with the next generation air fryer, right, or a waffle maker, and unlocking things that we have been reading about in NPD research and in Mintel reports and kind of following for years that literally counters everything that we've been thinking about. And then we'll quant test that and say, okay, wait a second, there's a really high willingness to pay for this innovation that actually isn't groundbreaking innovation. It's a step up, and there's a really big market for that. So more to come, but really, really excited about kind of thinking about how this example of rebranding the largest brand in our portfolio is going to unlock new brand kind of growth and even category expansion for us in the future.
One, I'm really excited about what's coming out now. I think I said it earlier, but it's the shift that I think of insights and the role it's going to play from a support function where it might be a page in a deck, and then you go on to being a strategic thought leader at the table. It is the presentation and driving that piece of it. It's shifting, and how we continue to engage and get more proactive about insights and letting them drive the way. To your point, identifying the function. It's not just what's trending on the MAC curve. It's about what they're willing to pay and where they're willing to lean in. The insights and harnessing that and being more proactive and making it actionable. The organizations that are doing that best, that are, they're getting the seat at the table, that's the ones I think you're going to see be leading in the industry and being more cutting edge and more in tune with the guests. So we've certainly experienced that shift at Panera. I know other brands have as well, and continuing excited to see how that makes brands faster, smarter, better, more nimble, and ultimately more guest-centric.
I think for us and for a lot of our clients, one of the key things that's top of mind is evolving data privacy regulations. And our perspective is that this is a really good thing for consumers. We know consumers are a lot more savvy about how their data is being used, how it's being processed. And so I think in the next 2 to 3 years, when we think about the future of insights, a lot of that will look like, well, what is the data value exchange for a consumer that is opting into an experience that we have better insights about how that person wants to be messaged to or wants to be given a specific product that's more tailored to them in a way that they'd like to receive it. So I do think over the next few years, when we're talking about insights and data specifically, a lot of it will look like how we make sure that the consumer is front and center, which a lot of us have talked about this afternoon, and then also how we ensure that we are really relating to them in a data privacy safe way and using those insights in a way that benefits them.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We do have 5 minutes for Q&A. Anyone have any questions for our lovely panelists?
Hi, how are you? My name is Jerome Dixon from Rock Nation. Rock Nation is in the business of leveraging our celebrity clients to help brands reach business objectives. Example, the NFL halftime experience. So my question is, what's the framework for taking insights from different products or brands for cross-functional learnings per se? And I'm looking at you, Matthew.
It's a good question, because I think we kind of view influencers as a microcosm of our customer base, and influencers can really help us to reach people that we wouldn't reach from normal advertising vehicles. That's why we have, teams that are focused on products, but we also have teams that are focused on channels themselves. we like to look at these influencers as a way of reaching those that we couldn't in a normal capacity, but also we're on some level skeptical about it, because in the end, just a product being used by someone that people are looking up to doesn't necessarily mean sales. It could mean consideration, and that is important to us as well. But you can imagine how often people are in the market for a washing machine or even for a TV is not very often. Frequently, influencer success is around what I would call more transactional products, or products that are not very frequent, are extremely frequently purchased or considered on a frequent basis. So clothing, food, music, these are all things that people are frequently always in shopping mode. But when you think about our products, the most frequently purchased product would be a phone, and that is something that you would replace every 2 years, in some cases every 3 years. That said, we have a wide variety of products that over time you could say, well, maybe they're shopping somewhere on Samsung every 6 months. So I think part of our analytics are to determine and to classify customers into pieces of, these are people that change out their phones every year. These other ones are changing out every 5 years. But while they don't change out phones very often, they're changing out TVs every 2 years. So this gives us a way of an audience to look at and maybe to consider what we're using for our influencer base in which products to focus on. But for us, we are not very broad. We have a very selected group of influencers that we're using, but they frequently cover all of our product set and not just one. So it's frequently not just, this is somebody that is really into tablets or really into photography with phones or whatever. We tend to use ones that are good throughout across the board. So one that we frequently use is Martha Stewart. She does a podcast. She frequently messages us. She's done a cooking show at our store in Meatpacking District. That's just one example, but she's also at CES with us. She also showed off new TVs with us. But we look at the influence and the impact that she's having. It's relatively difficult to determine that, though. The normal ways that you measure that are they do a blog posting and how many people viewed it and how many people commented and things like that. But it's hard to track that all the way to a sale. And so that's what makes influencer marketing difficult for us ourselves. I don't know if that specifically answers your question.
Hi, I'm Erin with Omnicommerce Marketing Agency, Advantage Unified Commerce. But I have a question regarding where would you say organizationally and from a priority your company or teams fall in prioritizing how you assess data? Would you say you prioritize analyses that have a strong hypothesis and are clearly established with test and controls and taking maybe more time to set them up, or fast and agile, but then on the other side, maybe the data is more convoluted and not as clear? Where in that kind of pendulum do you prioritize the right place to be? And second part, with potential internal stakeholders or clients questioning that decision, how do you maybe combat that we feel strongly about where we position ourselves and maybe, kind of quiet the noise?
I'll take a first stab at that. No surprise, fast and agile is kind of the name of the game for us. I think that will change for sure as we continue to scale next 3 to 5 years. In terms of, how I think what's so important, like some of the best business decisions we ever made were when we looked at the insights and we said, we just feel like that's not right, because there was, all of the historical information and what consumers were exposed to for years and years in this category. Like they haven't seen anything different before, right? So how would they know how to respond? And we've taken a couple of pretty big risks where, even our retail partners were like, we're not comfortable with this. Let's launch with black. Let's launch with gray. And we're like, no, just look at how this photographs. It's incredible. And here we are. Walmart has told us that you have disrupted the appliance category by introducing white at scale, which historically has been something that no consumer ever wanted. So it's really fascinating. So that's where we're at today. We'll change, but
I have one other comment about that. And I think you have to look at every decision on a scale. So what can be changed back quickly if you make the wrong decision? I think every decision needs to be based on some kind of fact or some kind of analysis or some kind of information from customers or whatever. But if your decision can be walked back quickly and easily, then maybe you don't need to worry about having complete information. You can go as quickly as possible. But I'll just give you an example of something we've looked into. We've looked at changing our loyalty program, and I can't walk that back once I make a decision on changing that. I can't walk that back quickly or easily. I would have to change terms and conditions. I would have to change all kinds of stuff. And when you change stuff like that, just look at the situation with American Airlines and their Advantage program and how people are outraged by the change that they've done recently. We can't do that. And we don't need, we need publicity, and all publicity is good, but really only good publicity is what I want to have for any program that I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are getting stopped. So thank you guys so much. Please give a round of applause for Matthew, Rachel, Alicia, and Sisi.